Watch out, Brian Page. Nate Secor is becoming one of the biggest names in rental arbitrage, and he is here on the Fearless Flipping podcast. If you have thought about starting an Airbnb but don't have a ton of capital, you're going to definitely want to listen to this episode. If you want financial freedom, time freedom, and want to leave a legacy for generations to come, you probably have heard real estate investing is the place to do that. How do you get started? What do you have to do? When's the right time? If you are looking for those answers, you've come to the right place. My name's Kyle Stanley, and this is Fearless Flipping. My mission is to help you learn this business and conquer real estate investing. Hey everyone, welcome into the show. Before we get started here with Nate Secor and rental arbitrage and Airbnb, a very exciting and hot topic right now in the world of rentals and short-term rentals, I would like to introduce you to a brand new page that we just started on fearlessflipping.com. Just go to fearlessflipping.com/Airbnb host, and you will see a blog that I posted that gives you tons and tons of tips on starting an Airbnb. Plus, we have a brand new deal analyzer. I'm calling it an Airbnb calculator that you can plug any deal into. And essentially, based on the numbers of what you've got for expenses and possible profits, you can see that spit out number of what you could possibly make monthly, yearly, and your return on your investment. So you do not want to miss out on that. Make sure to go to, again, fearlessflipping.com/Airbnb host. Now, let's get to the show today. I'm super excited. Nate Secor is one of the bigger names in rental arbitrage, especially here on the West Coast. He has over 35 listings in Newport Beach, and now he has the life of his dreams. He's moved to Montana where his wife's family is at. He gets to manage things from afar. He gets to live the life that he wants to, and he's done it all through the vehicle of rental arbitrage in short-term rentals, specifically Airbnb. Now, stick around to the end. He has an amazing offer for the course that he's got, and just for our listeners only, can you get a great deal on it. So without further ado, let's check it out with Nate Secor. Hey guys, we have got a real fun one today. This is one of my mentors in Airbnb. As you know, I talk a lot about Airbnb here with Fearless Flipping, and what started out as a business for me that was really just in regards to house hacking and renting out a room in my house now has become one of the main streams of income for me. And it's no different for Nate Secor, who's coming in from Missoula, Montana, where he just moved to with his wife and his family. And the reason they were able to move there is because of all this incredible passive income that they are creating with multiple businesses, but especially with Airbnb. And I'm really, really excited, Nate, to have everyone hear your story. And thanks for being on the show, man.
Thank you for having me, Kyle. Appreciate it.
Awesome. So Nate, before we get started, usually I ask people what is their most interesting real estate investing story. But what I want to ask you right now is, what is your most interesting Airbnb story that you have for our audience?
Wow, that's a very loaded question, because definitely you get a lot of interesting stories in Airbnb, and we have had, I'd say, thousands of reservations at this point. However, one that comes to mind is actually not on the side of people staying in my places, but the beginning of how we got started. So when we got started in this, and I have two business partners. When we got started in this, we decided that we wanted to do it. And our very first property was a little shaky from the get-go. We went on the appointment, and it was just a little weird at the appointment. And that's something that you got to do when you got to think about that when you are going to an appointment. If something seemed a little bit off. And the reason is because how we do our properties is we lease them and then we sublease them on Airbnb.
Mm-hmm.
So we went there for the lease, and it was a little shaky. And us being in the real estate world, we went and checked title to the home. And it turned out the guy that we were talking with didn't have title to the property. We followed up, we went back. Everything seemed to be on the up and up because the guy drove a $100,000 car. He lived above the garage. He said, "This was my home. It's my family's home. I have the right to rent it to you, even though the title's not in my name. I own a yacht company here in the city where I work, which is Newport." And everything sort of checked out. And we were like, enough checks out that we're going to go ahead and we're going to do this anyways. It's our very first property, and we kind of want to get the ball rolling. So we're going to go for it. So we go for it, and everything is fine for a few months. And then what it turns out, the situation is that he was a renter there. He subleased to us. He didn't really have a rental or a sublease or any kind of an agreement, which means he can't
Yikes.
sublease. That is something you can do legally in California unless you have a document that says you can't. Now, the person who was actually the owner of the home died. She
Oh,
was,
wow.
yeah, she was like, it's fine. You can do whatever you want. But then her heirs, 6 children, wanted the possession back and threatened to sue us and said everything we were doing was illegal, and we were in some hot water. Now, the good thing is I call it kind of like a setback story too, because we could have quit or said this is too hard or whatever. But we had already gotten a few more properties by then anyways. And as it turned out, we had to give that property back. So even though I am doing well in Airbnb, the very first property we got was kind of turned out to be a learning lesson, was somewhat expensive for us, could have been even worse. And so, kind of a funny story, but really kind of a story to, like, make sure you dot your I's and cross your T's also.
Yeah, no kidding, no kidding. Well, I mean, I've shared my first story with some people as well, and I definitely did Airbnb the wrong way in the beginning, based on some courses that are out there that teach you, how to essentially kind of go underneath the property management without them knowing, and landlords. And so, I I definitely, through learning the hard way like you, realized that there's a right way to do this and a right way to dot your I's and cross your T's. And so, we all have learning experiences, right? But what I want to really focus on before we get into the meat and potatoes of how you've built up this 30 plus listings rental arbitrage with Airbnb in under 2 years, which is like mind blowing to me and to a lot of people. Before we get into that, I want to know what you mentioned it real briefly there. You had a background in real estate. What really brought you to both the real estate and the Airbnb investing world?
Really great question, because it really was exactly like that. I was in real estate and just a typical, agent. I did okay as an agent in California, making a moderate 6-figure income, I would call it, which is a lot of money in some parts of the country, but is really a moderate income in Southern California.
Especially
And
Newport.
I had a client who had this property in a kind of an average city. It was called Lake Forest, and but the interior of this home was beautiful. It showed really beautifully, and I got his home ready to sell. It was gonna sell. He got really impatient after about maybe a week to 10 days on the market. And a year earlier, he kind of did the same thing and was talking about me leasing the home, and the fact that he actually did a little bit of Airbnb. And he was leaving the country, and he said, why don't you lease it for me, and then you can do Airbnb. And at that time, I knew absolutely nothing about Airbnb. As a matter of fact, when I started looking into it, I realized, oh, I've actually used Airbnb to stay somewhere before. I didn't even know that that's what I had used. So I knew nothing about Airbnb. But I also knew he had told me he was bringing in about $6,000 or $7,000, I think, as an Airbnb, and he
Wow.
was going to rent it to me for 3,500. So I can do math. So I knew that that left something, at least for me, if I continued to do that.
Absolutely.
So I went ahead, took the property over, knowing that I didn't think he was like an Airbnb genius or anything. As it turned out, we got that property up to about $6, $7, $8, $9,000 a month, and
Wow.
my rent stayed fixed at 3,500. And I don't want to get into all the details of it, but I actually lease optioned that home. So now I have that home, but it's not an Airbnb. And there's other side of Airbnb, which there's legislation going on in that little podunk town, Lake Forest, actually outlawed Airbnbs. So I actually have another full-time tenant in that property. So I've had setbacks. That was my very first property. I had a setback there, but I did see that one worked. And so when I saw that that one worked, I had already gotten 2 more in another city where there was already legislation, and they have occupancy tax, and they're actually more favorable to Airbnb. So, that's one piece of advice I would give. If you want to work in Airbnb, you want to either work in a place where there is legislation in place, especially if you're going to buy a place. And if you're going to do lease arbitrage, you can probably still be in safe. You can be safe working in areas where there's no legislation. because again, you're leasing the property. It's not as big of a commitment as owning the property.
And that really is gold right there. First of all, I want to just take a step back because you accidentally ran into lease arbitrage.
Yeah,
And that's amazing because, when I first found out about rental arbitrage back in May of this year, it was like, oh my gosh, like, duh, like, why didn't I think about that? But so it really was interesting to me that you started this back in 2017 when it really wasn't being talked about. So, I mean, that's pretty amazing that you stumbled into that. But on the other side of it, I think that was really important information. I want to repeat that for people, that you want cities that do have some sort of awareness and regulations or ordinance put in with Airbnb, because it's actually going to protect you more. I didn't think about that in the beginning. Luckily, I didn't get hurt by that. In Fresno, there is a huge need for Airbnb. And I know that a lot of people would have been affected if they just pulled the rug right out from under us. Luckily, they just said, hey, you got to go get a business license. And that's being put into place right now, which is like, that's essentially what you want to be looking at if you're going to be building an Airbnb business, is that this city is aware of it and that they're not going to one day be like, wait, what's Airbnb? No, you can't do that. And take it away from everyone that's not owner occupied or and within 1 square mile of each other. Like, there's cities around everywhere where, like you just mentioned, I think that are doing things like that. So be aware. Anyway, enough about that tangent. Let's talk about how in God's green earth did you get in under 2 years over 30 listings on Airbnb, which, by the way, guys, he grossed over $2.1 million last year with Airbnb alone. Again, that is $2.1 million. And correct me if I'm wrong on that number. But how were you able to do all this, Nate?
well, the numbers are, this is, the getting towards the end of 2019. So 2017 we did $18,000. 2018 we did 1.4, and 2019 looks like we'll end out around 2.5, 2.6.
Wow.
And I think if with my current inventory, meaning if I don't really add any more homes, maybe adding one or two, we should finish next year probably 3.5 with our current inventory, because again, we're kind of scaling up as we go. Now again, you can do this from nothing, but here's what I had a little bit of a blueprint of success. So, and I also had a little bit of a blueprint of failure, right? Like, I lost this property in Lake Forest, but I had two more, and those two that I had were actually a little bit before 2017. So how the scaling came about was me and a couple buddies sitting around going like, hey, how can we do something more than, kind of making good money every year in real estate, but like having nothing to show for it at the end of the year. And me explaining, hey, I have these two properties and they're making me between $8,000 and $10,000 a month net. And took me very little money to get started. One of the things you can do is time when you start. And I started those two right before summer. As you know, in California, summer is high season.
Of
I
course.
think within 45 days, I had all my money back from those two.
Wow.
So I explained that to them. Then I explained I'm making this ongoing cash flow month after month, and said, how you guys want to kind of join me and create a company and do something bigger? And they were like, absolutely not. So, it doesn't always go how you think it's going to go.
Yeah.
And then a week later, we had another meeting talking about the same thing. And I kind of just reiterated the same information. And I was like, this thing doesn't have to be 8 or 10,000 a month. This can be 80 or $100,000 a month or more. And they said, okay, let's do it. So I have one guy that is my operations guy. That's why I can be in Montana. He handles basically everything that someone would need to handle that's at properties. And he also has people that help him do that. Then I have my finance guy who was one of the other three guys there. He's the one who brought in the startup, because I actually was like, hey, I know what I'm doing at this. I'm the one who can create this. I'm not going to put in my own money. So, right. And I had the blueprint. So it is a little easier to do that if you have an example of how you're already making money. You can do it without an example. You can use like a third party story like me or somebody else and how they're making money. But if you have, say, even, hey, I own a 4-bedroom home and I Airbnb 2 bedrooms out in my house and I'm paying my mortgage. Can you imagine if we got another one where we were renting out all 4 bedrooms? Or
Yeah.
You know, that is a, you know, that would work as a story to an investor. So the investor was the third person. He was putting the money in, didn't have any idea what kind of money he would be putting in, but he actually owns another very successful business that I have a small piece of. And, you know, we've done business things together in the past. So he said, great. He didn't know if he was going to need to put in 25 grand or if we were going to get one property, but he said, let's just kind of see how it goes. So we did that. And then, so then the actual first property for the company was the one that I shared about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
That was the one that, so there was like this first beginning for me, and then there was the beginning of like creating this as something bigger, and the spread there. So I didn't just start in November of 2017 ever. I started several months earlier with my own little journey.
Wow, that's awesome. So you really started and dipped your toe in the water on your own, and then you
Yeah,
found these partners that could help you to scale.
right.
And really, the money is the big thing. I think when it comes down to it, is yeah, you can get your money back, but if you don't have the 6, 7, maybe even $10,000 to furnish the place in the beginning, how are you going to scale this and get multiple units? So do you think at the end of the day that was the big thing that just kind of dropped all the fear for you and allowed you to just go out there and start having tons of meetings?
Um, Having the money, you mean? Was that the thing
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
Um, I wouldn't say that because
Okay.
he was a good friend, and basically the money was guaranteed. So like it wasn't like I had this like blank check to do whatever I wanted. I had to treat this money like if I lost it, I'd be having to pay it back also
Right.
myself. And that person isn't somebody we had like a necessarily like a written agreement about that, but we, you know, that's how we kind of operate. So I wouldn't say that it just gave me like being fearless, but I really did have to use logic to get out of my analysis paralysis, because I can tell you that anyone can do the math. If you make X amount of dollars on 2 properties, you'll make 10 times more on 20 properties. Pretty simple math. Okay, now go do it. And when you start thinking about the investment, and you start thinking about having to fill 20 calendars, like, hey, can I fill 20 the same as I could fill 2? Can
Hmm.
I fill 40 the same as I could fill 10? And each time it's like kind of like growth for you as a person, because you have to expand what you think is possible, to be honest with you.
That's awesome. Well, I think there's a lot of things I want to ask there, but I'm also realizing we haven't really given an established definition of what rental arbitrage is for some people. And there's probably some that are listening right now wondering like, wait, how is he getting 30 without using his own money and all that kind of stuff? So can we just give a real brief description of exactly what rental arbitrage is?
Oh, you wanted me to do it? Sure.
Yeah.
So first of all, when I first did it, I didn't know there. I don't even know if there was a term for it. Like somebody came up with it, and it's a super fancy term, rental
Right.
arbitrage. Sounds like we're like Wall Street wizards or something, right? Well, rental arbitrage is pretty simple. Instead of buying a place and leasing it out and being on the hook for the mortgage, instead you find a place where perhaps the rent would be less in many cases than your mortgage payment, and you put it on Airbnb, sublease it out. I call it buying wholesale, like you're renting it wholesale at like say $2, $3, $5,000 a month, whatever the rent is, and then you're renting it out retail, 2 night stay, 4 night stay, 5 night stay on Airbnb or another platform, and whatever you make on that platform that's more than what you're paying in rent, that's your arbitrage. So if you rent it for 3,000 and you get 6,000 on Airbnb, maybe you have $1,000 in expenses, so that's 5,000 you have left. You have a $2,000 profit to put in your checking account.
and you
Or your
don't
pocket.
and you don't own the real estate, which is what I think is the most important thing for people to understand in terms of the scalability and how you've been able to grow so quickly.
Yeah. And by the way, we've probably done over 40 properties um, in those 2 years, but there are a handful that I've given back. Most of them would be because I there is a certain point where you feel like comfortable with like 30, and if I have some that are making me 3,500 a month and some that are making me 1,000 a month, sometimes like 1,000 a month, it just in my business model it might not fit into what works. So I would actually just let those run out and move that furniture to a new. And I can tell you that when I first started out, 1,000 a month would be great. So, what works today might change for you over time as you scale.
Hey, Fearless Flipping community, we are taking a quick break from the podcast to talk about Airbnb. For those of you that don't know, I have built much of my residual income around Airbnb, despite a lot of other investors being really excited about long-term renters. I was not. I saw an opportunity with Airbnb to get to my goals faster, to get more cash flow, and to pay off my houses quicker too. So instead of being really happy like a lot of other investors are with $200 to $300 of cash flow every single month, I've turned my renters and rentals into over $1,000 on average of cash flow every single month. So if you want to learn more about Airbnb, my systems, where I pick my Airbnbs, how I communicate with guests, maybe you've already got Airbnb as a business on the side right now, but you want to take it to the next level, I am absolutely here to help you. You can book a free consultation with me about Airbnb. Learn more by booking at fearlessflipping.com/consultation, and you get me for 30 minutes for free. That's right, 30 minutes absolutely free. That's once again, fearlessflipping.com/consultation, and I'm looking forward to helping you conquer Airbnb investing. Absolutely. Well, and I think one of the things that is most important that I know I preach to people is really know your area. And I know in Newport, correct me if I'm wrong here, a lot of your high cash flowing places have the opportunity to fit maybe upwards of even 20 people. Am I right?
I mean, that's a little bit high, but we have duplexes certainly like top and bottom. If you take the whole thing, that can easily fit 20 people.
Okay. So what I guess I'm making a point there of is, take Missoula, Montana, and take Newport and, compare them to each other, and it might be attracting a much different crowd. And so like for me in Fresno, I'm always preaching people have to stay in Fresno. They don't want to stay in Fresno. And so when it comes down to it, having like a place decked out with a bunch of vacation things in Fresno may actually repel people away because they think, hey, that's going to be more expensive than what I'm looking for. I just don't want to have a hotel experience. I want to have an at-home feel experience. I don't need an arcade. I don't need a pool table. I don't need a pool in the backyard. I just want a comfortable place to put my head without pain, an arm and a leg. Versus maybe in Newport, you're going to have like a group of people that are coming in and want a vacation and have a good time and want all those extra things. Am I do you agree with that?
Absolutely. And we do have a few, we've, tested certain areas that are a little bit more metropolis like, and they do fine as well. They don't have like the huge numbers in summer like we have, but they seem to be a little bit more consistent in the winter. And they're like a little bit more standard. They're still like 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath homes, those ones that we have. But they're a more moderate rent. There's actually no ordinances in that city. So there's no occupancy tax. There's no, technically it's kind of like not legal or illegal. Like, like many places right now, there's just nothing happening. And those turn out to be fine units for us. And the ones that we have that are, higher end or bigger or more expensive, they're also more work. So you might find that yours are, simple and easy, and you can actually scale to more units, even though you might not be making as much per property. You might be able to have more of those with less labor because, maybe like there's someone on site that does small repairs already. Like all the utilities and stuff. Maybe everything is just more simple. Ours, we have bikes that have to be tuned up, and people fill our drains with sand when they're washing off, so we have to get in there with plumbers sometimes. So we are kind of at this point a bit of an operation, and sometimes expenses can go up quickly too in that scenario. So sometimes making a little less monthly but having very low expenses ensures that you're running lean and that you're going to make a profit every month.
Absolutely. Well, each business is different. And I know with my business model, I like the ease of having, a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom where there's going to be 3 to 6 people in there. Not a lot of things can go wrong when you've got smaller groups, but there's a lot of people even in this area that have some places that can fit 15, and they make, sometimes as much as $400 a night, which is great. But you just got to define what kind of investment you want to put in and what kind of business that you want to be running. But with that being said, I know some people are probably wondering, okay, like what is actually possible? They're hearing $1,000 a month. They're hearing $2,000 a month. What property for you has grossed the most in 1 month? How much did that look like? Just gross 1 month, one property.
I think our best month on a property is probably a very nice home. It's probably between 3 and 4 million, detached single family home on the peninsula that we have. And I think in July, that one probably brings in over $40,000.
$40,000. And what are you
Maybe
renting it out for?
45,000. What's that? We get
What?
that one for 10,000 a month.
10,000?
Yeah.
That's that's amazing.
That one, I'll tell you, that one was a really sweet deal because I think we
Okay.
picked it up in around May, which is pretty good. Gives you just a little bit of time to get ready for like summer, get a few reviews.
Yep.
That one came fully furnished.
Oh,
And
wow. Nice.
very nice furniture, and they wanted an extra 5,000 for the deposit for the furniture.
Okay.
So 15,000 to get in plus first month's rent. I think it did like 20,000 the first month, so we were still about 5,000 in the hole, counting first month's rent deposit plus furniture deposit. The next month it probably got all the money back, and then I think the next month was July when we made $45,000.
Jeez. So how did you come across that one? Where did you find it?
We haven't really brought it up, but I do have a course on how to find properties, and that one I would describe as like one of my, I think like the third best method or whatever, which some people frown upon and don't do, which is actually working with agents and speaking to agents about this. And that was one that also I teach the follow up on, because when we went there, they were a no. And they also had it listed for $12,000 a month. So they were like the perfect big property for us to get, possibly a little overpriced for the lease. Somebody that we followed up with, and then probably not a ton of interest at $12,000 a month because one, they're a little bit overpriced, and they're also in like a very specialty niche price range, right? So then they said, well, okay, we're like, thinking about going with you guys, and but the owners, they're not going to go down that much. And I said, oh, okay, well, what's their lowest? She said 10,000. So I said, okay, that's fine, we'll take it. So, I just asked one question, and that saves me $24,000 a year. So I'm pretty happy with that one.
So I'm assuming that's probably your currently highest rented out in terms of how much you're paying for rent. And then also at the time was probably the highest you were paying for rent. Was that really scary to take over a rent like that?
Yeah, there always, when there's something new to it, there's a little bit of fear because you always, so this is one thing I love about Airbnb. You always are thinking that other thing worked, but will this work?
Right.
And what I love about Airbnb is not everything works, but a lot works. So if you tried 10 different things, maybe 8 or 9, even possibly 10 different opportunities would work. Could be like one was a studio and that worked. Now you're wondering, well, what about a 4-bedroom house? Well, that worked too. What about a mansion? That worked. Like a lot of different scenarios work. So that's one of the things that I do like about this business. It makes me look a little smarter than I really am when, you pick things and then they just work. So
That's
but yeah,
awesome.
it's definitely nervous. And I will say that there's maybe 1 or 2 things that perform a little better, but they're 2 units. So like those duplexes I mentioned, those rent too for around $10,000. Like they're like 2 places, one on the top and one on the bottom for roughly 5,000 each. And those 2 can pull in similar numbers. So that's the other thing that I say about Airbnb, which is like, basically, if you looked at your total rents, it would give a very good indication of your total revenue, if that makes sense. So
Absolutely.
for somebody who has twice as much rent, they'll probably have twice as much revenue.
Okay. Nice. Well, I think a lot of people are super excited about this right now that are listening in, but there's probably some people too that say, well, yeah, Nate, you are doing this in Newport. Like, of course you're making great money. I'm living in, a place, I don't know where, maybe just somewhere a lot less populated, a lot less of a destination location. What would you say to those people that want to do this but are afraid that their place won't get rented out?
The first thing I'd say is the majority of complaints in that regard that I hear are that people are concerned they can't get landlords to say yes to them to do it. It's not so much they're concerned like, yeah, well, maybe if you have 30 properties, you might not do 3 million in revenue like me. You might do 1.5 million in revenue because rents are lower in your area. That's not really their concern. They get that and they're fine with that. But their concern is like, well, how do I get to $1.5 million in revenue if I can't get landlords to rent me their property? And you can do that, of course, because you're in Newport Beach. Well, what I tell them is that we're not getting properties from people who have ever done vacation rental. We're using the system that I have to get properties from people who have been living with a traditional rental in Newport Beach, many of for like 20, 30 plus years with this property. They know that everybody else is doing vacation rental and they've said no. So I believe that we're dealing with the absolute most hardened landlords in the city because they are just like, don't want to do vacation rental. But we make a proposition to them that really works for them. And it's our job to change their mind. So again, that's what I try to teach and train people do is use the system to get landlords to understand and educate them so that it's a win-win situation, not only a win for you, but also a win for them.
And that is the perfect opportunity for me to kind of open the floor for you to talk about the course. But before I do, I really want to let people know that, I've been doing Airbnb since early 2015. I left thousands of dollars on the table because I didn't realize how much I was missing out on, and that I could have been doing the entire house, that I could have been scaling this with rental arbitrage. There were so many different things that I missed out on. And it's funny when you invest in education to go where other people have gone, you see the fruits of your labor and the fruits of you actually making an effort to learn more. And for me, it was basically February of this year, 2019, when I realized I need to be doing this whole house thing. And I started researching. And Nate, I don't think I've shared this with you. The best month I had with Airbnb before that was, again, just house hacking, was like $1,100, which is great. Anyone will take that. But now the best month I've had here, just 7 months later, has been $12,000. So I've 10x my money by just educating myself. And a lot of that I have to thank because of you, because I learned the right way to do this rental arbitrage thing. And that's what people can expect to get out of your course, is the right way with the ethical mindset. And again, just like what you mentioned, it's a win-win all the way around for you, for the landlord, for the person that's helping you to pay for the furniture if you go that route. But anyway, I just had to give my plug there before you start talking about it. So floor is yours. Tell us about it.
Well, yeah, that's kind of my philosophy is if you have everybody around you winning, it just makes it better for everybody and it makes doing business a lot easier. So there's not going to be anything real sneaky or like where someone's losing in my program. Like, again, I don't recommend people do Airbnb behind the landlord's back or anything like that. So, I think the program is really comprehensive. It starts with some of the pitfalls that I've made. Some of them I learned through other programs that I've paid for. I've learned through my mistakes and everything else. And one of those is going to be how you set up a business. And again, I don't want to go into just one thing with too much detail, but you have to be careful too of like getting 1099 from Airbnb unless you're okay with that. But you should at least know that could happen. So I show you how to avoid that. Then we're going to go into how to actually get properties. So how are you going to get landlords to say yes to you and do business with you? And then how are you going to get more properties? And show you a little bit about how to scale and how you can actually do a little bit more business than the average person doing, one Airbnb. That's the majority of people have one Airbnb. And then we're going to go into what I call the calendar hacks. There are so many things in the calendar hack. And I see on a daily basis, just thumbing through other people's listings, learning, and I see like, oh, there's a 4-day gap, at $500 a night for this property, but it's not bookable because they have a 5-day minimum. And I'm pretty sure that if somebody told them I would like to book your 4 nights at $500, they would do it.
Yeah.
But they don't even have it available to be possible. so they're losing a lot of money. So I'm
Mhm.
going to show you all those different hacks and how to do that. And I think that overall the program is very comprehensive. It's about 50 videos, and for somebody who doesn't want to scale, there's large sections that I think are very detailed about, you know, how to maximize on your one or two Airbnbs that you have. But for those people who know absolutely, I basically assume you don't know anything about Airbnb. And for those who want to get into it, I just start at step zero and go through approximately 50 videos to the end. And then what we're going to do is, because you're going to have questions at the end, we're going to create a private Facebook group only for paid members, where everybody is working the exact same program, knows exactly what's, you know, what's working and what's not working based on that program, where people can come with questions and get answers to some of the stuff that's in between. Because I also don't want the program to be too overwhelming where people get, again, analysis paralysis, or just feel overwhelmed and like don't feel like they can start.
That's awesome. And what I can just say is, I'm going to pause for a second. The lawnmower is, if you can hear that, can you,
My dog
can you hear
is,
that still?
I can't.
Okay, good. Um, so that's awesome. The reason that I believe in this course too is because, and you preach this too, Nate, you're an average guy, I'm an average guy. An average person can take this course and feel like I can go out there and build $1 million business if I just take these steps and repeat them again and again and again and again. And, you know, your numbers have really matched up to what I've seen, which is about 1 out of every 7 meetings, I end up getting a new Airbnb listing. And because I've got these systems and everything in place that, yeah, a lot of it for me was trial and error. But people can take your course and skip that whole trial and error, or at least the majority of it, just by adopting your systems and start going out there and do it. And so that's what I love about this, is it's taking the average person and giving them a, you know, literally a tool to build $1 million business. So we're going to put in the show notes too, but I also would like to know just where are we sending people to go get that course?
Okay, so the name of the course is Next B&B Millionaire, and that's the website, nextbnbmillionaire.com. And because we've been working together and you are awesome and I want to do something for your listeners, we created a special code for your listeners if they want to sign up. I don't know how long that code will be up, but I also know that people will come back to your site
Yep.
more than a few, you know, days later, because it takes a little while to put up. So we'll have that up there for a while. And the code is Fearless Flipping. So if they put in Fearless Flipping, what they're going to do, instead of the product costing $19.97, we're going to drop that by $1,000, and they're going to get a special rate $9.97. So
It's amazing. I mean,
yeah.
guys, that's not even, let me just put this in perspective for people, because the people that have not done an Airbnb yet, you know, you're going to need, if you're doing a 1 bedroom, 1 bath, you know, maybe about $3,000 to $4,000 of startup income. So we're talking about a quarter of your startup income can go towards education that will make you equipped to do all the right things. And again, like I said, I lost so much money just by not knowing the things that I was missing out on. And really, for me, I spent way too much money on things that I didn't necessarily need. And just by, if I had this course a year ago, I would have been, honestly, I would have been scaling quicker, but I would have also been making less mistakes financially, which would have in the end made me more money. And $1,000 off? Are you kidding me? Like, yeah, I'm jumping in on that. So that's awesome. Thank you for offering that to our listeners.
Yeah, and just to give people an idea of how the program is set up, is it's going to be me on video. So if you hate my mug, you know, I'm sorry, you might, I have to put it on audio only. If you hate my voice, then I don't know what to say. But it's going to be set up on a video like that. And then a lot of the stuff, I'm actually going to have a screenshot. So it'll be a video of my screen. Actually, everything from walking people how to do a listing to how to make these slight adjustments in your calendar, and how to make these, you know, I call them like the Airbnb ninja hacks. Because if somebody just tells you, I just hate programs where they're like, you're telling me all this information, you know, I just need a visual. I need to see how
Mm,
you're doing it. And you
yep,
can literally, if you have a widescreen, you can watch the video on one, and you can have your listing set up on the other half of the screen. And you can
perfect.
just copy me. You can pause and copy me. and really learn how to get into the details of the program and details of what I'm up to without having to extrapolate or interpretate my words into like, hey, how come this doesn't look like on my screen what he's saying? So that's kind of the format of it, just so people get an idea. By the way, too, we have a thing where we're letting people watch module 1 through 4. We're
Okay.
giving people 10 days to watch module 1 through 4. There's 8 modules. If it within the first 10 days, they only watch modules 1 through 4, we'd like to at least make it so that if you watch 5 through 7, you're going to pay, you know, so I think that's fair. But if you watch anything 1 through 4 and you don't like it, you have up to 10 days to get all of your money back. We want people in that want it. So, and then we're also going to give you module 8 included, whether you give us all your money back or not. And module 8 is going to be all the paperwork, the marketing materials, all the things that you're going to need to be successful with landlords and make sure that you have the right verbiage in your documents so you don't sign a lease and then 3 months later find out you made a mistake. We're going to give you all that for free. We're going to give you 1 through 4 you can watch. And as long as you let us know within 10 days that you don't want to watch 5, 6, and 7, then we'll give you all your money back. And
Awesome.
if within 10 days you watch 5, 6, or 7, then you bought the program. And, you know, we think that's fair enough for people to get a sense of what's happening on the program and whether or not it's right for them.
I think that's more than fair. That's really awesome. So Nate, thank you so much for opening up people's eyes to what Airbnb can do for them. It's obviously changed your life. You're changing other people's lives with education. So thank you so much for being on Fearless Flipping and helping people to conquer Airbnb investing. Okay, so you heard it, $1,000 off of that course, more than 50% off is what you're getting. That's an incredible deal, guys. This was the course. This was the guy. Nate is one of my mentors that honestly, at the end of the day, I could not have done this without a course like this or a mentor like this. Now, that's not me saying you have to go buy the course, you have to go use Nate or myself as a mentor. That's me saying that you need to have some help along the way. I just had someone else that I helped start their first Airbnb, and their response was the exact same. We couldn't have done this without some help. And if you think you can do this on your own, be ready to make the big mistakes that I had to make along my way, because it wasn't until year 5 that I finally decided I need some sort of mentor or course to help me along the way. Nate's giving it to you right now for over 50% off. Go check it out, fearlessflipping.com/next BNB millionaire. Again, fearlessflipping.com/next BNB millionaire. And you can see the link, you can see the coupon code that we mentioned there, which is Fearless Flipping, everything that you need to be able to get started on that course. Now, again, if you are wanting to just get more information on Airbnb, check out our brand new page, fearlessflipping.com/Airbnb host, where I've got our analyzer. It's a calculator that helps you to understand exactly what you can make on a deal. It's got tips, it's got tricks, it's got all these hacks that you can start using to understand how to start your Airbnb venture. So if you've got this far in the episode, you're probably ready to start your Airbnb adventure. So what are you waiting for? Get started. Go conquer Airbnb investing. Check out the show notes again, fearlessflipping.com/next BNB millionaire. We'll see you next time.